Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter. And I would like to welcome back to the show our man from Southern California, Chris. How you doing today, Chris?
Good, doing great. How are you doing, Steve?
Not too bad. I gotta get a cool intro for you because I got Christy, the hardworking lawyer from Detroit, and I'm still working on one for you, Chris.
I know. I mean, because I work in suicide prevention, you definitely are not going to want to lean on that.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to laugh about what you just said.
I'm just saying.
You're definitely not laughing about suicide prevention whatsoever. But yeah, I guess I need to come up with this. I need to incorporate the Disneyland thing because I think that you and all the stuff that you and Seth get to do down there is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Disneyland being in our backyard is like maybe my favorite perk about where I live.
Definitely. Well, let's jump over to the other side of the country, the East Coast, and I would like to welcome to the show. Thanks for reaching out and volunteering to come on and talk to us, Steve from Tampa. How are you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks for reaching out, Steve. You just completed your Grand Slam, plus we get to talk a little very merry time cruise on the beautiful Disney Magic out of Miami. But before we jump into that, why don't you give us a little bit of a background about how did you get into Disney and what's your Disney background, your family's Disney background?
Okay, let me try to keep this as short as possible. First cruise was back in 2001 on the Disney Wonder. I was in college at the time. We went and did a land and sea. We spent some time at the Contemporary, and then we did, I think it was 4 nights on the Wonder. Fast forward, we moved from Brooklyn, New York, about 2 years ago. My wife and I, my 2 kids, down to Tampa about 2.5 years ago. I have a lot of family down here, and actually a lot of family that work for Disney that live over in Orlando. So that was kind of the entryway. Of course, my kids helped that process and get back into going to parks and checking them out. And then Florida resident rates came, and the rest is history. So, and then we also joined, we're owners at Animal Kingdom Lodge, Disney Vacation Club as well, because it's just loyal to the brand all around. So we vacation quite a lot with Disney, and for us, it's pretty local, but it's still a great getaway.
Florida resident rates are the thing I'm most jealous about. I don't think I would want to live in Florida because that humidity is truly no joke, but those Florida resident rates make it so much more affordable to cruise.
It does. It's a big help for us. I'm not sure if we'd be able to go quite as often as we have for a lot of reasons, because we don't have to fly with the 2 ports we have here as well, so that helps. But the only downside with the Florida resident rates is you can't really predict when you're going to go, and you really can't plan necessarily. So if you really have a cruise in mind, or if you have an inflexible schedule, that's when things get a little difficult. And actually, my wife just went back to work this year. So the reason why we went over Thanksgiving was a Florida resident rate, but also because she's now a school teacher and it's very hard for her to take days off. So we're kind of on that schedule where it becomes really expensive to cruise now, with the school schedule. So, and also all the Run Disney events that we talked about, Steve.
Yeah,
and do those as well.
Yeah, the school schedule, it is amazing. I was just looking at the prices for next year on something, and you could definitely tell when spring break hits and when the kids get out of school in the summer as well, as far as the pricing goes. So how do you guys do the Florida residents? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is do you watch them all the time? Are you constantly on the website watching to see what pops up, or how do you guys usually find them?
So I do go on the website. There are of course, there's a number of blogs out there and like forums and threads where people are really great about updating, and they'll update what the guaranteed and restricted rates, as well as military, Florida resident rate, Canadian rates, and I think there's even European Union rates now, right? Or just European resident rates that they have listed. Last week they had like the Cyber Week stuff where they had 25% off cruises. So I'll keep a pulse on that a lot. And there are times when you have peak cruises that do become available for a bit of a discount. The only thing is, too, that of note, maybe this has been said prior on the show, is if you do an onboard booking, the $200 or whatever it is, I think it's $200, right? Where you get on a future cruise and you get a reservation and a discount, you cannot combine that with a Florida resident rate, which is why we've kind of stopped doing those onboard booking discounts at the moment because we really try to find a relative bargain, if you will, when we go. And we had, prior to my wife going back to work, we had a little bit more flexibility with our schedule.
So it's $250 now for the onboard booking, but with the Florida, are they guaranteed cabins, or are they? Does it change depending upon the cruise?
It changes. This one, what was great about it was we were able to find adjoining rooms and pick our rooms. We had Category 9C Ocean View rooms on the second floor, and we're able to find them adjoining for my mom and my stepfather to join us. That's kind of a little bit more unusual. Sometimes you have to whatever's assigned to be that discounted rate, you just kind of find them on the ship, or you can have a guaranteed or restricted rate, which we've done before, and it's always worked out. I've honestly never had a bad room on these ships. You can, I don't know if there is a bad room. Maybe there is. I have yet to find it.
Have you ever done a guaranteed rate where you got actually bumped up into a category above the one you booked?
I have once, and that was last September, which is generally like a very off-peak time. It was like the second week school was in session, for example, like in the Northeast. It was like mid-September. That was a Halloween on the high seas. It was still hurricane season, plus the start of school. If you could cruise during that time, you could find some great rates around that time if you're able to go. And we had like I think a family veranda, and they gave us like a deluxe veranda. I think that's how it worked. I'm bad about the categories, guys. Sorry, I'm not always clear, and sometimes they still confuse me. But so that was like a mild bump up.
You probably had a deluxe veranda, and they bumped you up to the family size veranda that has a little bit more space in it.
Right there, it's like 40 more square feet or something like that.
Yeah, but that's still cool. The price difference from the regular veranda to the family veranda is usually like $1,000 at least.
It is. Yep, it is.
So that's pretty cool.
And we had 3 rooms together on top of that. So that goes to show you some of the availability that happens around that time. It was on Fantasy. It was great.
Well, this was your 8th cruise. We don't have time to get through everyone, but what are some of the different cruises you've taken so far? Have they mostly been in the Caribbean? Have you been to Alaska, Europe? What have you guys been on?
We've been mostly just here, honestly. We haven't done it. So I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Even if you don't have kids, it's not hard to imagine that a 2-year-old is not going to do very well flying to Barcelona, dealing with the time change and going out to the Mediterranean. Here's my philosophy with vacation is with toddlers is just temper your expectations and don't set yourself up for failure if you can. If you have to travel far and see family and stuff, I understand that. Or if your kids just have a demeanor where they can just roll with it, that's awesome. Our children are not necessarily that way. So we've done local stuff, and we've done things that I don't want to undermine the ports or like say anything bad about the ports in the Caribbean. We've certainly had a wonderful time, but my kids are not even sometimes old enough to do the excursions. I mean, a lot of them have to be 3 or 4 and up to go, participate in those excursions. So we haven't really focused too much on exotic ports. It's in the cards. It's down the line. For the moment, we're just like drive out to an hour and a half, 2 hours to Port Canaveral and go from there.
You're not too far off. We took our youngest to Norway when he was 5. Of course, my parents live in Hawaii, so they'd been on planes back and forth, a lot. So they were a little bit more used to it, but he did pretty good. I was surprised. I wasn't sure how he was going to do with that long flight over to Europe. So you're a couple years away if you want to try and venture out there. But like I said, we had some pretty good luck at 5. So, all kids are different, obviously, right?
Yeah, I think my 4-year-old now, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but he's like in a really great space. From 3 to 4, it's like a world of a difference. I absolutely think he did great on the 4-hour road trip. It's just my little 2-year-old it's like a little Tasmanian devil. He's got a lot of
a lot of energy.
He's 2. I mean, 2 is just they're just not normal. They're I don't know how to say, they're just emotionally a mess. They're not communicative all the times, but certainly so he's been on now 5, and this was definitely the one where he knew characters and got excited and actually recognized we're going on a boat. So, we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Well, let's just turn to the cruise itself. So this is a 6-day on the Magic out of Miami, very maritime cruise. And you guys are on board Thanksgiving. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I was really kind of we booked about 45 days out, I want to say. We didn't have any Thanksgiving plans. Usually have Thanksgiving at my house here, and we hadn't established anything, and I was just kind of jonesing to go, and I knew that my wife was not willing really at the moment, since she just started her job, to kind of take off some other days or do something that maybe in January or February that we had originally looked at. So when this came up, I just kept pushing it. And finally, yeah, I'm usually the driver of these things. My wife's a little bit more she wants to go, but she's not the one that's like looking at the message boards and finding all the rates and stuff. So yeah, we contemplated a couple things, but I think this seemed to make the most sense. It was very similar rate to what the 4-night was over that same time period, and we'd never been on the Magic, so it was a layup for us.
Perfect. Chris, are you the driver or is Seth the driver in your family? I'm the driver in ours.
I'm also the driver, which makes sense why I'm co-hosting this podcast.
Not Seth.
Yeah, Seth would be like, I don't know, Chris will tell you.
He just tells you when to show up and have a good time. So
yeah.
Well, let's turn to the cruise. So you living in Tampa, did you drive down the night before? I find that we've sailed out of Miami once. It seemed like it was a pretty easy port to get into and out of if you're down there that morning. What did you guys do?
We drove day of. I contemplated just kind of driving out Friday night, perhaps like driving over to Naples or something like that, or maybe making it. My wife had to work Friday. I had to work Friday, and my son had school. It left on a Saturday. So we actually just woke up really early. We didn't have an onboard check-in time until 1, which is a little late for us generally, but I didn't mind it. I know the chaos of trying to get there early. Sometimes it's just kind of futile. Yeah, we drove out there that morning and had planned one nice stop so my kids can stretch their legs and run around a little bit. And then I don't know how familiar you are, if you had any guests talk about it, but you go across like Alligator Alley from the west side of Florida over to the east side, where there's almost nothing but protected land and like no exits to get off the highway. Essentially, it's just a straight line to get to the east coast of Florida. So you better have your kids together, gone to the bathroom, all that stuff before you get there. So we stopped in Naples and headed over to the port.
Perfect. I hadn't heard that before. So when you get over to the port, where'd you guys park your car for people that might be doing something like that?
Once we actually got inside, I can talk a little bit about how much of a nightmare it is to get to Miami. At least that was our experience, and it could have been because it was a holiday week. There aren't many signs around. Mm-hmm. It was my experience when I was driving in there, so I had no idea what terminal the ship was in. We pretty much we went around once and then had an eyeball like where the ship was in respect to where we would be getting off in a terminal. I got off a little too soon at first and then had to go. There was like nothing, no one helping you. It was just a complete nightmare. It was very, very busy. Once we got inside, we spoke to someone and they said Disney and directed us to the curb, dropped off our stuff. And then I think it was Terminal J we were in. And then the parking structure was very close to the ship. I would say maybe even closer than where it is at Port Canaveral. But yeah, actually getting in there was very chaotic for us. We
spent a night in a hotel and then we just took a bus from the hotel. So we didn't have to actually pay attention to where the bus was going. And I didn't notice the signs before. So that's good to know. What was the parking fee like? Was it reasonable, you think? Or
I want to say it was $122 or $132 for the week. We looked at trying to just explored saving money, but it's like 1.5 miles or 2 miles away. And it was like $30 or $40 less, I want to say. It didn't seem worth it to just then jump in like a cab or something for us.
So you guys get there a little bit later, so I'm guessing the boarding was probably, a lot of the people that were there early, it's probably kind of quieter getting on when you did. What was your thoughts as you got on board the Disney Magic?
So just really quickly, it was a huge security line and a nightmare to get into the terminal.
Well, I take that back. I shouldn't have seen things.
No. I wanted to make that point because I don't remember what our experience was in Miami before, but for people, I don't know what was going on. Nobody said anything. We were waiting in line to get through security for nearly an hour. I got there around noon, 12:15, didn't get through security until about 1:15. And a boarding group hadn't even been called after we checked in. That kind of part went pretty smooth. It was basically all aboard, and we just got on at that point. We didn't even have to they were pretty much just calling everybody by the time we got upstairs and checked in.
The thing about Miami is that Disney wants to expand operations out there, and I'm sure that makes sense because it allows them to have a second port where they can get to their 2 private destinations eventually and still, have these folks from Florida who might be going to the theme parks. It's, what is it, a 5-hour drive from Orlando to Miami?
Orlando to Miami is a little closer than Tampa to Miami. I want to say Orlando is more like 3 or 3:15 maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's conceivable that people could go all the way down there, but it's just a different experience because they don't own their terminal. Whereas at Port Canaveral, the only people selling out of that terminal are Disney. In fact, Disney just announced that they're closing down that terminal for 5 months to sort of renovate it and modernize it. And I think for Miami, they're going to have to do that too, because right now they don't own that terminal. And when Disney's not sailing out of it, other cruise lines sail out of it, and they can sort of take down all the Disney signs in like, you know, a day, and it can be a completely new cruise line. So I wonder if the like non-streamlined experience you had just sort of has to do with the fact that like Disney's a little clunkier in terminals that they don't own.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear from other guests what their experience was like out of Miami. Again, I kind of thought maybe it was an outlier because it was Thanksgiving. There was multiple ships in port ready to go. So I didn't get too hung up on it, you know, but it was fairly hot. We waited a very long time to get in. So yeah, we were definitely growing a little impatient, but the day completely turned around after that. So
well, that's good.
So just looking at it, it's Terminal F right now is where they leave for if anybody's sailing out of Miami and you're kind of confused. You can go on the Disney website, go to the port. They cruise out of Terminal F. If you want to try and plug that into your GPS, if you happen to be driving down there. Well, what was your thoughts as you got on board the Disney Magic? First time being on board. I know you've been on the Wonder sister ship and whatnot. What were you guys' thoughts?
It was awesome. I mean, you forget a little bit that you actually get on, and it's a different experience when you get into the atrium. You know, with the Dream and the Fantasy, you get right on into the atrium, and they call your name before you even step on. Really, on here, you just kind of get onto the deck. They call your name, and you just immediately get in touch with, okay, this is a much smaller ship. In fact, my little quick tip: my wife and I are very glad we didn't bring our double stroller onto the Magic, because those elevators are really tight, and I knew that going in a little bit from memory, but also from people just sharing their experience. Those elevators are significantly smaller, so we brought our little strollers. And again, I'll talk more to this a little bit later, but I loved that experience of being on a smaller kind of quaint ship, if you will. Not quaint by any means, especially when it was built, but relative to today's cruise ships and certainly the Dream and the Fantasy, it's much smaller, and I really enjoyed that.
That's a Miami thing that you just talked about, the not boarding in the atrium. They do that at Miami, probably just the way the pier's designed. But
gotcha.
If the Magic or the Wonder were at Port Canaveral, you would also board into the atrium. So that's at least one thing that you could get that classic Disney atrium experience if you were sailing out at Port Canaveral.
I'll have to lobby to get the Magic over to Port Canaveral again. It's probably been forever since it's been over there.
Well, when the Fantasy gets freed up and moves over to the West Coast, and the Magic can move up to Port Canaveral.
You really want that Fantasy, Steve, huh?
I need the Fantasy to be here.
Christy's like screaming at the podcast right now. She's screaming at her radio going, it's never going to happen. But okay. Well, let's kind of jump into it and talk about this cruise. Like we said, it's a very maritime cruise. What were you guys' thoughts of the ship? Had you been on a very maritime cruise before, and what did you think of the decorations and kind of the overall feel as you stepped on board with the decorations?
No, we did the Halloween on the High Seas. Never been on a maritime cruise or any other theme cruise. It's definitely themed on steroids, for sure. It's like just fantastic. It's not tacky whatsoever. It immediately kind of puts you in that space and creates this winter wonderland at sea. I thought it was really fantastic. In fact, so when we get into our room, my mom, as a little surprise to the boys, we went ahead and did. Now you can go online and they have access to all the things that you can do before you board, all the gifts or in-room stuff. And we did the Christmas theme inside of our room, which was really cool. It had some like paper decorations of characters hanging from the ceiling. They gave us this huge throw blanket that said there's like snow place like Disney Cruise Line, if you will. And it had a Mickey pillow, a Santa like sack to put your blanket and pillow, because obviously you could take all that stuff. It's yours. And that was really neat. It was like, I want to say it was like $70. And we happened to be at Disney World the week after. And that blanket was a Disney World blanket in the Magic Kingdom Yield Christmas shop, and it was like $60. So to decorate the whole room was just a few more dollars than the cost of that exact blanket at that Christmas shop in Magic Kingdom. So that was really cool and helped us really, help the kids like understand that this was like a Christmas themed cruise, if they hadn't already, by the multitude of decorations that were already around the ship. So that was really neat. It was beautiful.
That package signaled that it was Christmas time for the family. You said that your kids are 5 and 2, right?
4 and 2, yeah.
4 and 2, okay. Is your young one potty trained yet?
He is getting there.
Okay, so not able to go to the kids clubs yet?
No, and you have to be you got to be 3 and up anyway, regardless if they're potty trained. And I can absolutely, because if we get through this in a chronological way, I can tell you that was one of the best things for my kids this time. Before, they had been a little skeptical about kids clubs in the nursery. So my little guy did go to the nursery, but we used them a lot over the course of the 6 nights. And that was really awesome.
What was your itinerary?
So it was, of course, Miami, day at sea, Grand Cayman, Cozumel, day at sea, Castaway.
I've done that exact cruise out of Miami, but it was a 5-night and didn't stop at Cozumel.
Gotcha.
So that makes sense. A 6-night, they add one extra port. It's basically the Western Caribbean 7-night, but sort of 1 night less.
Right, and that was good for us too, because we've done 2 Easterns on the Fantasy. So this is our first time going to Western Caribbean.
So let's circle back and we'll touch on the kids club. We'll talk about Christmas and then jump into some dinner stuff. But let's talk about, we don't get a lot of information about the nursery. Could you talk a little bit about did you book a lot of stuff ahead of time? Did you book time into the nursery once you got on the ship? And what were your experiences there?
I had in the past reserved the nursery at certain times, thinking that perhaps those times were when people wanted to really drop off their kids. I do think people drop their kids off at the nursery during dinner at times, because, kids are just obviously, sometimes an hour and a half dinner isn't exactly the things they want to sit through, even if it is, Disney. But we explored that idea because I really didn't think Miles, my 2-year-old, was going to sit through dinner, except he did really great at that point. But the nursery, we went to the open house and kind of introduced him a little bit to the staff and got him kind of familiar with the space, and then just dropped him off there. And here's the thing, he went a little bit kicking and screaming, but the staff on this ship were wonderful. I have had it where I've had that wave phone and your kid's screaming for a little bit or crying a little bit and they'll kind of, I don't want to say they jump the gun in contacting you to get your kid, or your kid won't calm down. But this one, they were like, nope, we got him. See you later. Go have fun. And that was really cool because my son does this at his play space and drop off here. And, and other places, he'll try to play that kind of card and then immediately adjusts within 5 or 10 minutes. He's fine. He's perfectly fine having fun, and then it's a struggle to get him out of there. So I know his patterns. As a parent, your kids, but
definitely,
you drop them off kicking and screaming to a relative stranger, and they have a little bit of a different reaction. So, but they were awesome. They were wonderful, and that's how the cast members are across the ship from top to bottom. I mean, they're just the best.
So no problem as far as when you guys wanted to use the nursery, having availability to be able to use it.
Nope. I think the limit was 10 hours for the week. I want to say we used about 4 hours, which was a lot for us. Probably 3 hours more than we had used it in the past. So never had any issues there.
Let's kind of circle back to Christmas. What were some of the things that you guys were looking forward to doing on board the ship, Christmas related? Or did you want to get pictures taken, for your Christmas cards? What were some of the things you guys were looking forward to doing?
This is so funny. So there's your plan, and then there's what happens, right?
Yeah.
Especially life with children. So, I said to my wife even before, we never get the photo package. Let's take pictures as a family. I mean, the price that you're going to pay on board, we could pay a professional photographer. Let's get some, back here and pay a similar amount, if not more. Let's get a Christmas card together and get an actual good photo of all of us. So that none of that happened. I will say we were so bad on this trip about taking photos. My kids did get photos with Santa, and I'll speak to that. They did it on the day at sea, and it was relatively no lines, and that was great. But we were really bad as a family about taking photos. And the other thing we're kind of bad about was, so my mom, part of this trip, my mom really wanted to do this trip, and she was like, I really want to see it snow in the atrium. Well, the Winter Wonderland show, which I heard Chris, who's on the show last, talked to this a little bit. It's at 10:15 at night. My kid's bedtime is 7:30. So and on the ship it was later than that. But pushing them beyond that, it just gets a little crazy. They just lose it. But we did on the first night. So I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but on the first night, what I really loved, we did end up going to the Christmas tree lighting. And that was really awesome. The kids loved it. Everybody in the atrium was singing Christmas songs. That was super cool. And definitely the best event that we went to, that was Christmas related.
If you keep your kids up late that night, you're going to pay for it the next day. You're going to pay for it somewhere along the way when you push them along there when they're your kids' age.
You guys know, regardless, kid or adult, the first day is a lot. It's a little overstimulating no matter who you are. It's a lot. You've got to get yourself to a destination. You got to get through that muster drill. And of course, we again get out on deck 4, right in the sun, sweating, just so bad. And there's just a lot going on. It's a new ship for us. It's overstimulating. The same thing happens to us when we go to Disney World. I mean, like that first day you get in the hotel room, and if it's a new hotel room, they're just off the wall. So they saw the Christmas tree lighting, and then they were pretty much done. Went to bed around like 8:30, 9 o'clock that night, and that was it.
So did they get to meet Santa Claus at least?
Yeah, so the first day that Santa made an appearance was a day at sea, and that was bonkers. There was a huge line. But I knew that, that wouldn't be the first time he was around. So we actually saw him the day we were at Grand Cayman. So that worked out. We had no line whatsoever. Just walked right up to Santa.
Does Santa travel with his wife or with elves, or is it literally just Santa?
So Mrs. Claus does that reading, the story time with Mrs. Claus, but I did not see them together. I don't know if they were quarreling or what the issue was. They weren't in the same. It might have been at odds. I don't know. It's a stressful time for them.
I mean, it's got to be hard to take a cruise right in the middle of your busiest season, but
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and if he doesn't have Wi-Fi, how is he communicating with his elves? It's a whole thing.
It's complicated, but it sounds like they do their best to have some type of Christmassy things available throughout the cruise, not just on one day.
Definitely. For this theme cruise, for sure. More so than even Halloween, for sure. Without a doubt. Almost every day I felt like, there was something Christmas related.
So one of the other things that they kind of talk about, I'm not sure if your kids are old enough, but they talk about different themed crafts for kids. Did you guys do anything like that?
Yep, they did the gingerbread cookies on day 2. So that's day 2. They did that, of course. So that day they're up at 5:30 in the morning. So have you guys ever been up? and so it was a rough night of sleep. I left my wife. I was like, you know what? You sleep. I'm taking the kids. My Precious Cove Cafe wasn't even open yet.
You're drinking the bad coffee with me in the back of the ship.
Oh my God. I'm drinking the bad coffee. My kids spilling water on the floor as they're cleaning. But if you guys have ever had the pleasure of waking up early on a Disney ship, I highly, highly recommend it. We saw the sunrise. I got a red eye coffee, which is cold brew. I got their cold brew, which their cold brew is great. And a shot of espresso in there, and got the kids pastries in the morning. I just absolutely love that place. It was like a routine every day. I go there. And then, got back to the room that morning, went for a run, deck 4, which was great. Although windy. Steve, you've run out on deck 4 before, right?
Yes.
Sometimes when you're at sea, you kind of make that turn where...
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
It's like, my God, I had this ambitious plan. I was like, I'm going to put in 5 miles. I think I got 3.5 and wanted to die. It was rough, but it was good to get some exercise.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. It makes me think about Paul Thornton, who wrote that book, The Joy of Cruising. And there's a guy that ran a marathon on every single Royal Caribbean ship. I can't imagine how they did that.
I would have to crawl.
The lap is just not big enough either. I feel like there's only so much horizon meets the ocean viewing that you can do before you're like, I cannot make 26 miles on this ship.
No. And you just are ducking around people sometimes too, as later it gets in the morning or day, you almost feel bad because people are just kind of hanging out and playing or just walking. And there's certain, when you get to the front of the aft of the ship, there's not a lot of room over there. So it's hard to keep your pace, but hey, listen, you're running in the middle of the ocean. I'm not going to complain. And I had to get the legs moving for my Run Disney training. So
yeah, you're keeping up with your training even on your vacation, which is admirable. I will say the only time I've ever run the Castaway Cay 5K, I ran it on deck 4 because the ship was late to docking. So I've never even run the 5K on the island because they were like, we're not going to let you run on the island, but we will let you run around deck 4 and you'll get a medal for it.
Good for you. You did it. That counts.
I don't count it. I'm waiting.
How was the cookie decorating? The kids had a good time doing that?
Yeah, so that was cool. You just pretty much got like these little hard sugar buttons and icing. It wasn't like you couldn't make them like terribly ornate, but they both sat there. They loved it. They, would put like a one layer of icing and then just eat it and then get the next one. And so they were nice and sugared up for the kids' clubs after that.
Here you go.
Yeah. Have fun. You just ate 43 gingerbread cookies. Enjoy. So, yeah, it was fun, though.
Anything on the topic of Christmas? I love the fact that they have stuff throughout the entire cruise, and I love the fact that they theme it that way. A little bit different than Halloween, which we've been talking about. Anything else about that before we move on to maybe dining and some of the onboard activities you guys did, Steve?
No, there was a lot of holiday crafts. Like you go through the Promenade Lounge, and they would just be like a CM there, like, "Hey, you want to do holiday crafts like with the kids?" And so it was really great. There was a thread of something going on all the time, and that was excellent. And the Christmas music, and then the Funnel Vision had Christmas movies playing, so it was wonderful.
Were
really
there
was.
ever just random adults decorating cookies without children?
All the time.
Okay.
In fact, the craft event that I had gone to looked like there was just like a couple couples, over there at the lounge, just doing holiday crafts and just talking to each other.
I mean, decorating a gingerbread cookie sounds like a dream, especially at sea.
Eating them was a little better, but I can understand that.
Did they have the gingerbread house on the ship completed and unveiled by the time you boarded, or did they wait to do that?
Oh, no, it was already, it was visible. And my understanding, it was in a different location than it had been. It was right by the guest services desk and kind of not obstructing anything. Somebody had told me that it was like closer to the tree last year or something, and they moved it. So, I don't know, I could be wrong. But in fact, I think it was Chris that interacted with me on Twitter regarding that and asked me where it was. He would know.
He would know. I thought it was funny that they were putting the tree up as they were getting on board the ship when they got on board the Dream, but... Well, let's turn to dining. You guys get to go to Rapunzel's Royal Table for the first time. Kind of would love to hear your thoughts on that, but also beyond that, you kind of talked about, really worked out well for your 2-year-old as far as dining goes. What worked well for you guys, I guess, for him?
So the first night we got to Rapunzel's. So that was great because I was really excited to see that kind of themed restaurant aboard. It did not disappoint. I thought it was really amazing. It was not the show. We didn't have the show the first night that we had every because it was 6 nights. We did every restaurant twice. So Rapunzel's, the show was actually on Wednesday night, but we did Rapunzel's the first night. It was wonderful. Food was very good, and the decor was awesome. I was thoroughly impressed with what they've done, and I hope that kind of stuff continues. I imagine it's only a matter of time before the Dream and the Fantasy get something similar and overhaul, which I guess they would overhaul the Enchanted Garden, right?
You'd think that they would, right, Chris?
Yeah, the thing is, Animator's Palette's going to be a staple. I can't imagine a Disney ship without that. So I bet you there'll be an Animator's Palette on the Wish. But I thoroughly believe that they're going to build all new ships. And when they put Fantasy in dry dock and when they put the Dream in dry dock, they will have at least one theme to some sort of Disney IP restaurant, because Tiana's and Rapunzel's Royal Table have been like smash hits for the company, and everybody goes there and loves them. So I think the only option, if you sort of follow the logic, is to do Enchanted Gardens on the older ships, or the newer ships, I mean.
Yeah. It's very divisive with all the intellectual property and IP tie-ins to the theme parks, with all the classic rides and stuff. I think I don't like too much of that stuff coming over. Sometimes it's a little forced, I think, in the theme parks. But on the ships, they do it really wonderfully. And, along with the live entertainment and the actors, it is really great. I like Enchanted Garden on the Dream and Fantasy, but I could, having another themed restaurant would be fantastic.
And also, Steve couldn't lose that restaurant with the escargot that's always off the lobby.
I love that. I look forward to it as well, Steve. I hear what you're saying.
There we go. A man after my own heart. Yeah, the escargot dining facility off of the lobby, huh, Chris?
That's all you think of it as, right?
It's Lumiere's, it's Triton, it's Royal Court. I got the names down on those, but I was kind of curious. I'm kind of curious. I mean, they got Rapunzel on the back of the Wish, but Rapunzel's already on the Magic. I wonder what they're going to do. I wonder if they'll eventually move Rapunzel's Royal Table over to the Wish, or if they'll just go with something completely different.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see them repeat an effort or have something twice. I mean, I don't know, because I know there's Frozen on 2 ships now, right?
There will be. I don't know if it's opened on the Fantasy yet, but if it hasn't, it's opening like right now.
You know, again, there's a large outpouring of people that don't like that, but I don't know. I mean, the pattern of where the Wonder has been lately is not something that's been on our cards, so I wouldn't hate, being able to get on the Fantasy and see Frozen, but I get it for people that want something original on all the ships.
Talking about Frozen and talking about Rapunzel, or Tangled, I guess I should say. What did you guys do as far as the shows? Did you guys go to any of the shows? How did you attack that with the kids this time?
So let me not go on any kind of rant about this, because I don't want to come off as kind of too opinionated about this, but I don't think my children are exactly the most gracious to live performers, if you will. And they have. My son has seen Aladdin on the Fantasy, and he actually stayed start to finish on there and was okay. It's just that when we had early dining, again, the shows are late. There's the point where it's like, is this about the kids or is this about me wanting to see this, or is it both? And so if it starts to feel like they're just like not going to make it through a full show and I'm going to ruin some people's experience around me, my wife's a theater major. We lived in New York. I grew up in New York. I have a tremendous amount of respect for those live performers. And not to say you can't bring kids. You can absolutely bring kids, and you can go walk up and down. You do whatever you want. Just for me, I know that it would not be exactly a fun experience. So my mom went to a couple shows, I think. The only thing I would say is I stayed back in the room one night. My wife wanted to see Tangled, and she showed up about 10 minutes early, could not get a seat. Literally couldn't get a seat at the late showing. And maybe 10 minutes is not a long time, but we'd never experienced that before, where we couldn't get a seat at a show. She walked around, had like an usher or cast member or somebody trying to look for help her out to try to find a seat. Couldn't find anything and came back.
It's pretty unusual for a single person not to be able to find like one seat. But when they first premiered Beauty and the Beast, it was like that, I know. And I imagine if there were going to be a show on the Magic that it would be like that, it would be Tangled, just because that's sort of the unique show you can only see there.
Yeah. I was bummed. I definitely wanted to see it. But, in the world of divide and conquer with parenting, somebody had to stay back with the kids. So I said, why don't you try to go check it out? And unfortunately, she couldn't do that. But the only thing we actually got to in the Walt Disney Theater was the Frozen 2 premiere. We brought my son to that. Actually, we skipped dinner that night and went to go see it. And that was really great.
Oh, I have jealousy. I've actually never been to any of the premieres at sea. I've never been on a ship when something was premiering. It
was cool. People were really into it. It broke my heart a little bit because we skipped Animators that night, and we did Animators the night before. So I will say this too about Animators. I think the Animators on the classic ship blows the Animators on the larger ships out of the water. It is
Agreed.
So it is not even close. In fact, it's getting a little bit tired to see the other stuff. That's just my opinion with the Crush Turtle and the Nemo. The technology is really cool, but there's no show on the ship that speaks Disney to me than when they take you through that montage and then like Sorcerer Mickey comes out and people are clapping. Like that is what I would personify as Disney magic right there. And I love the black and white tile. That is just such a fantastic moment on the ship, and it was awesome. Love that, Animators.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
As you would say, Chris, I stan classic Animator ship. There you go.
I stan classic Animators. I truly do. We're sailing on a classic ship next year, and I'm most excited about that because I agree, Crush is fine, but it's not as cool as like the good old-fashioned Sorcerer Mickey parading around and all your servers come out and it's so good.
Yeah. I really hope they never touch that restaurant in its aesthetics. If they update the technology and stuff, fine. But the way that comes to life and goes through the history of Disney animation is just fantastic. It's really great.
Steve, do you have an animator's palette preference?
Oh yeah, I've never voiced it, and to be completely honest, the magic and the wonder just blow in my mind the dream and the fantasy away as far as animator's palette goes. And you hit it just like you said, Steve. Just that the sequence of going through the whole thing from the black and white to the color. You know, sometimes technology is cool, and it's cool what they can do with Crush, and I get that too, but sometimes just the simple things that they have in the classic ships like Animator's Palette, it's there's something about it that is, like you said, is just so much more magical to me. So I totally agree with you. And you ruined my question. I was going to ask you that at the end. I was going to put you on the spot. Animator's Classic versus the Dream class ships. So I really hope, in all honesty, that on the Wish they rethink Animator's Palette and find something a little bit different and don't put in the Crush. And people can yell at me on that one, but I really hope that they find something along what they've done with the classic ships and maybe plus it up a little bit, but kind of more go that way versus some of the G-Wiz technology that they use on board the Dream class ships.
Yep.
Yeah. We don't have time in this show, but like, I think it'd be a really interesting thing to think about, like, what stuff did they add between the classics and the Dream class, and what did they change to try to figure out what they might change for the Wish? Because animators is one of the things that they added and changed between the ships. Same with adding Remy, for example. So I do think the number one thing that would change on the new ships is going to be related to food. You know, there's going to be some new food options or something that they try to do that's out of the box. But I really hope it's not animators, because I love the classic animator show.
It's the best.
So, I'm going to go back to one of your other points too. That's not a rant at all. That's just reality, and get on you for doing that, because we all face that point. We can either stay home with our kids and not take them anywhere, or we can take them out on these adventures like, Disney cruises, or take them to the parks. But like you said, you got to kind of temper it with reality. And as the kids get older, then you can experience those shows together with them. But right now, it just might not be the best time. And you just love that time while they're in the splash pad and having a good time there. And that's your moment to enjoy with your kids versus that, being at the shows. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody's circumstances, everybody's demeanor on their children. Not to say children shouldn't be, seen or heard in the live performances. It's not what I'm saying at all. It's just, when it gets uncomfortable for me, I know it's potentially uncomfortable for other people around me. I get really like self-aware about that. And I just, it's like that, what's that? You gotta know when to fold them. Kind of like, okay,
exactly.
We're done.
Exactly.
It's a long time. It's a long time to sit in one place. And after they had already sat at dinner for so long, that is a lot to ask of any child, really, never mind a toddler.
Hey, we feel totally the same way. Well, we're kind of running a little bit long. I want to touch on the ports really quick. I'm not sure if you guys did a lot, but as you said, Chris and Steve, you left in Miami, had a day at sea. The first day was at Grand Cayman. What did you guys have planned there? What did you guys do?
We thought about getting off at Grand Cayman. I know you have to tender. That seemed a little cumbersome, and I wasn't so convinced I wanted to tender off. And we were going to go to the beach. It's something we had done. We've done the Eastern Caribbean excursions a lot. But you know what? We live on the Gulf Coast. We have beautiful beaches around us. I do think it's good to get off the ship. I do think it's good to support the local ports. I do feel that way. In fact, I know it's been brought up several times in here, and people not getting off at Nassau. Well, guess what? The Bahamian government, I read recently, I think within the last year, has stopped the subsidies to a lot of the cruise lines to incentivize them coming to Nassau. And they're actually taking that investment and investing in the port to get people to come off the ships. So I think they're feeling the effects of a lot of people staying on the ships, on these big super ships, that we have now, that people don't even want to leave those ships. Mm-hmm. And just the experience at Nassau itself, which I think Nassau is also reconciling that as well. But we decided not to get off at Grand Cayman. I had never been there. We really just were there for the magic and the Disney magic, and wanted to explore the ship. And we took that opportunity. It ended up being great. They got to meet Santa. They got to just hang out at the pools all day and go to the kids' clubs. And so the ship was relatively dead, I want to say. It never, ever felt that crowded to begin with, but it was our day to really explore the ship for sure.
Nothing wrong with that. So the next day you were in Cozumel, Mexico. What did you guys have planned, or what did you guys do there?
Well, okay, so little tidbit here. I actually had to go in between this. My 2-year-old started running a fever, getting a little cranky, had a runny nose. And so if you ever have to use the medical or health center on the ships, they're really great. They took his fever. It was very low grade. We were relatively unconcerned. Just gave him Tylenol, had him rest a little bit. And, from the day at sea to the following day, fever kind of broke. He was a trooper. He would take those meds and just turn around. He was awesome. It was just pretty benign. It was very low grade fever. Health center was great. We ended up deciding to get off at Cozumel. I had never been there. It's kind of just a little bit of a mini mall right there by the port, if you will. We didn't have any excursions planned, and we just had a nice lunch and a good amount of adult beverages and margaritas, and had a lot of fun. And my kids were pretty good, and brought an iPad for them to play with, and that was it. We had some adult time.
And Cozumel's technically an island off the coast of Mexico, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so it had like island vibes, I'm guessing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the only thing that was a little weird is like when you get off. Have you guys been to Cozumel? I'm assuming.
I haven't.
Actually, I haven't been either. I've been to Cancun, but not Cozumel.
So you get off. It's like a strip through security. It's just there was a bunch of ships in port. When you walk through, it's on the right. You have excursions, and then the elevator wasn't even working, so I had a stroller and couldn't get up. You had to go to the second floor, so I had to take them up through the escalator to the second floor, and you have no choice but to walk through all the commerce right there. And it's it's open air, but it's shaded. And it's just what you would see, diamond companies and, trinkets and what you would see at port. Nothing out of the ordinary, but there were and a couple change restaurants. I'm fairly certain there was a Hooters in there, I think. I don't know. I was like, we don't leave home to go to like a chain restaurant here. Like, I'm just that didn't feel right to me. Yeah, we had some fun at lunch, and like, I wanted my wife's never been in a Senior Frogs. And I was like, just run in for a second. They were like doing a Congo and giving out shots. And we had like 15 minutes of an adult spring break. It was fun. I know a lot of people kind of hate that vibe, but I was like, my wife's never done it, and we had a good time. We probably stayed out there for about two and a half hours, and it was fun. And I was glad we bought the kids like little toys and stuff from some of the local shops, and got back on around like 1:30. And my son took a nap, and we hit the sports deck, which I will say, one of the gripes I have about the Magic, and maybe even on the Wonder, the sports decks, they need some TLC.
There's not a lot of room up there for the sports decks on the older ships. That's true. There's definitely no mini golf or anything like that.
I know, that broke my son's heart. He was so looking forward to mini golf, and I said to him, "Yeah, we'll play." And I realized, like a dum-dum, that it wasn't
there. Oh no,
plastic ships. But we played some ping pong and foosball, and there is some space there for sure. There's like asphalt, like half the basketball court is like completely unused. It just, I don't know. I thought they could do something over there at some point, but I just let them run around. They needed to just stretch their legs a little bit. And we had some fun.
So your last port was Castaway. You obviously got off at Castaway, right?
Yep. So we had the day at sea, and then which was where we had Rapunzel's, we had the show, and then we had Thanksgiving Day was at Castaway. So that was pretty cool. I did the 5K on the island, and I forget, it's just, no matter what time of year, it's just always like really, it wasn't hot, but it was hot when you're running. Like, it's just always hot. When you hit that runway, when you get out there on the 5K, and you're just like baking, So I did the 5K, did the sign up on the app before we got on the ship. I got the bib and signed the waiver in one of the, I forget some of the lounges and adult places, but they were giving them out one day, like on the ship. It was the Castaway meetup, and you signed your waiver, you got your bib, and they went back to the old course. I think Chris talked about that last time. They abandoned the new course for the 5K. So we finished up that. We got our spot that we always hit on the beach, right? Not that far from where the bike rentals are. And we always do the getaway package where we get the snorkel, tube, and the bike rental. I usually take the kids with the bike, and my wife goes snorkeling.
Do both kids know how to ride bikes?
Well, so my mom and my stepfather were there. So actually my stepfather got a bike as well, took my little guy, and I took my 4-year-old, and we went biking. I really like to go out there and bike. It's if you go all the way to the end past the cabanas, you get to the end there, and they actually set up a little water for you, which is nice. It's so quiet, and you get to look out over all of Castaway, and you can't hear a thing, and you just see the ship and everybody on the beach, and it's just beautiful. It really is amazing.
It's literally paradise out there.
It was great. We had wonderful weather the whole week. That day included Castaway, of course, was dressed up with the Christmas tree, and throughout the whole cruise, cast members were wearing, the red and white scarves, and characters were out in their Christmas kind of attire and stuff. So it was really beautiful. We did go back a little earlier than we normally do on Castaway. We went back to the boat around like 1:30. And then my kids were just really tired. They didn't. Usually my son naps pretty well out there on the beach. He just didn't nap all that well. Took kind of a short nap. So we went back and went to O'Gill's, and it was Thanksgiving. So we just sat back and watched some football, and that was fun.
So I've not done the bikes yet. Have you done it, Chris?
Yeah, I've done the bike. They're really great. It's also like fully paved out there. And it's really the most convenient way to get to the observation tower, which is out there. So I will say every time I've climbed that observation tower, I was like 90% in the back of my head thinking, this is going to break, this is going to break. And then the like other 10% was like, no, it's Disney, it's safe. It's Disney, it's safe. But then I would be like, this is going to break. So I don't know. The observation tower stresses me out, but I've yet to go to Castaway and not climb it. So there's my bravery for the day.
Yeah, Steve, you got to get a bike. It's nice to check out the island that way. It's really cool.
You're talking me into it, especially getting out to the end and being able to see the ship and it being so quiet. I think that the next time we go on Castaway Cay, we're going to make sure we get those bikes. So
they're super affordable.
Well, especially when you do the package like that, too, because I would love to do snorkeling again. We haven't snorkeled the last 2 times, so I think that would be kind of a good way to go. Well, let's kind of finish up and talk about Thanksgiving dinner. How did that work for you guys? Where did you guys eat at, and what did you guys have? And I think Chris has a question about the turkey.
I might disappoint you, Chris. Sorry, but I'll tell you in a second. But we went to Lumiere's, and the only thing, so I as much as I love Castaway, I don't absolutely love it on the last night. It's a lot of time in the sun, and it's just an awesome, fun day. But you're kind of wiped. You got to come back, pack, and get your kids together and turn that back around. And my kids were pretty tired. They were like nonstop on the beach during that morning. So that was like kind of the roughest dinner for them, I would say, even though they still sat through it. But why I was saying I was going to disappoint you is because my wife and I this year we just kind of stopped eating meat. I wouldn't go as far to say I'm vegetarian or anything. I'm not being preachy or talking about kind of why we did it. It sort of gradually just happened, and so we stuck to that. I do eat fish, and certainly ate more fish than I normally do for that week. So I did not eat turkey on Thanksgiving for the first time in my life, but it was there. My parents had it. They loved it. I ate the pumpkin mascarpone ravioli, which was delicious, and we had some apple pie all around. And I don't know if it was just where we were at that moment and just kind of a little bit tired, but the Thanksgiving meal, and I don't know how to say this. It wasn't too Thanksgiving-y, if you will. I don't know if I was expecting someone to wear like a pilgrim hat or something like that, but it just was not exactly maybe how I pictured it. But I think so much of that was because it was just our last night, and we were, kids were kind of tired and stuff.
Yeah, you're not alone on that one. I think most people would say that if they could have the cruise end with a sea day, they would, because there's something about rushing back on the ship and having to leave your bags outside at like 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. if you're checking bags, and feeling like you have to pack, and your cruise feels like it's ending after that perfect day. So that doesn't surprise me. Also, I think if we're being honest, I think I'm getting a rap for like being hard on Disney Cruise Line food, which I like Disney Cruise Line food, but Christy and I were saying it's got to be hard to make turkey for that many people, because that's a big bird. And I just feel like I don't know how they're preparing turkey if most people are ordering that. So the menu is probably trying to entice you away from the turkey to get something else as well.
Turkey's just, I don't know, it's not like a particularly easy thing to keep kind of moist right? So like to begin with, it can be a little bit difficult, especially when you're making it for that many people on a scale. But I did see quite a few people ordering something other than turkey. They had plenty of other options. I think there was a prime rib. I took photos of the menu and put it on Twitter. I have photos of it. I could send it to you guys again. But yeah, I did see people ordering many things that weren't turkey. But my mom, my stepfather stuck to it, and they thought it was great. The food was fairly consistent. We didn't go to any specialty. We didn't go to Palo, fortunately. We had back in February when we went on the Dream. And actually in February, we had Castaway the first day, and that was really cool. I really enjoyed that kind of order of ports.
Oh, I'm with both of you guys as far as that goes. If you could have a day at sea, so I mean, just think about that day. It's your last day. You're in Castaway. You're out in the sun, and then you come back. You got to pack, and then you're supposed to go to this big kind of themed dinner of Thanksgiving. That's a lot of things happening, and your kids are a little bit younger. Even with my kids being older, it can be overwhelming sometimes.
It totally is, because they don't, and as kids do, they don't necessarily just like sit there and sip a virgin daiquiri under an umbrella. They're just all around the beach, making new friends, building sandcastles, every 5 minutes asking me to do something with them, which I'm absolutely lucky and privileged to just do that with them and be there. It's just not exactly like my tradition is to have a con cooler and sit down for 10 minutes. And that's about as much as I get. I envy the people that are, put their chair up to the water and are sitting there with a book. And I'm like, oh, it must be nice to read a book on vacation. That sounds awesome.
I think my wife and I took a nap for the first time because our kids disappeared to cool into shade, and they were playing pool and ping pong together, and they were actually having a really good time together. And we actually had 2 hours. So it will come, Steve.
It will. And I'm certainly not going to rush it. And like 4 is just such a sweet spot right now. He's just so getting into it. He loves it. He couldn't stop talking about it when we got off. And he's definitely spoiled. He's been on, I think, 6 of these things, my son Henry. So
that's awesome.
He's spoiled. He's got a good life.
Well, as all good things do, they come to an end, unfortunately. You get back to Miami. How was debarkation and heading back to Tampa? Any thoughts as far as getting off the ship? It was a little bit of a struggle getting on, but how was it getting off?
Easy. We normally do express walk-off on the shorter cruises on the Dream, which I think we've been on, I think the most often. But you know what? It's funny. We pack just about as much on the short cruises as we do on some of the longer cruises. We always do laundry. We like to walk off with clean clothes. I don't know what it is. We keep our room neat. We walk off with clean clothes. Even our stateroom attendant was like, you guys keep your room really clean. I was like, you can thank my wife for that. So, but this time we did leave our luggage outside the room, and it was really easy, aside from one of our luggage tags falling off and we couldn't find the bag for a little bit. But so pro tip, if that ever happens, there is a little section inside the port of bags that are not tagged or their tag had fallen off.
Oh.
You just go over there and find your bag. So we had like a mild panic and then found it really easy, got through customs really quickly, and it was very easy to get over to the parking lot. We did the prepay and we were off. And it was the Friday after Thanksgiving. So I was worried at first that we'd get into like rush hour around Miami, but it really wasn't that bad because it was kind of a pseudo holiday, I guess, the day after Thanksgiving. Not a lot of, not as many people going to work, I guess, that day.
Everybody was at Target at Best Buy doing their shopping.
Oh, there you go. My nightmare.
Well, as we kind of finish up, Chris, do you have any other questions? Otherwise, I've got 3 to kind of finish up with you.
No, I'm ready to hear your 3 questions.
Well, since you took away my Animators versus Classic versus the Dream Class ship, how about Aqua Duck versus Aqua Dunk?
My wife, so I had intentions of getting on the Aqua Dunk. It just so happened that my wife did it, but I could tell her from her perspective. Okay. She really loved the Aqua Dunk, but she was like actually mildly surprised. She was like, it's a little bit serious. It's a good drop. So I would say the Dunk is for the adventurous side of you, but I think the Aqua Duck is a little more family friendly for everybody, and like obviously more scenic, that it goes all around the ship. That might be a little bit of a cop-out answer. If you're a thrill seeker, the Dunk is definitely better, but I've been on the Aqua Duck several times, so I might veer in that direction.
Okay, well, let's finish it up with just some tips then. How about tips for families traveling with younger kids? Anything that stands out that you want to pass on to people, Steve?
This is such a subjective kind of question because, our thing is just know your kids and know your kids' cues. And, since we're annual pass members, we're TVC members, we go to the park a lot, and I see And I feel for those families that have paid a lot of money and use their resources, their time, and their energy. They want to experience the park all day, every crevice of it, and they want to stay to fireworks. We have literally never stayed through fireworks because just my children would just melt down if I had to do that all day in the park. I know where they are. So I think just be flexible, temper your expectations, and go to the open houses. Introduce them to those spaces so they can get familiar and even see a familiar face like a cast member. And then, kind of gently push them to go there, even if they give you a little bit of pushback. I do hear a lot of parents saying, oh, my kid wouldn't go to the kids club. My kid wouldn't do this. Well, my son saw the Marvel stuff on the Magic and he was hooked. He got the little Academy card, the Marvel superhero card. He saw the Iron Man suit, Thor hammer. They had the video game. There was times I would go there. He would say, Dad, I don't want to leave. I'm staying. I was like, okay. So he went from like, oh, will you stay with me to, please leave me alone. I'm Iron Man right now. So, don't take a double stroller on the Magic and the classic ships for sure. And if you can, do laundry with your kids, that is helpful. They tend to spill stuff and it's nice to walk off with some clean clothes. And if you ever need the health center, we did take like ibuprofen and like kids allergy meds. You can get them on the ship. They're a little expensive if you need them, but it'll help you just in case you get a little sick. We're actually 2 for 2 with our kids getting sick in the last 2 trips, but they handle it like a pro. So,
did he have to be cleared before he went back in any of the clubs with just a fever?
No, I was actually surprised about that, but I think because it was so low grade, he said to me that we technically consider, I think he said 100.4 fever.
Okay.
And he was like right on the border of that, but had just taken Tylenol like 2 hours. But we decided for 24 hours, I wanted him not to have a fever to put him back. I thought that would be selfish on our behalf, to expose. But it turned out that actually he didn't have a virus at all. He had, when we got off a week later, came back with another fever again. He actually had an ear infection.
Oh.
We had to take him in and give him antibiotics, and his cold had turned into a little ear infection. So he did not have a virus. No one else got sick in the family, luckily. And he didn't have anything communicable to anybody on the ship. So I'm very careful about that. I don't like to expose other people to it if I can. I would have quarantined them myself.
Oh, definitely. No, I meant to ask you that before. My youngest son threw up on our spring break cruise because he ate ice cream all day, and then the ship was moving a little bit at night, and we had to have him get checked out down at the health center before he could get back in the kids' clubs. They had to clear him, so I was just curious about that. But here's the most important question. What's next for you guys?
So since we're like these last minute folks, as far as cruises right now, we don't have anything on the books. I have my eye on a Marvel Day at Sea in February. We'll see what kind of special skills I have to convince my wife. And I really would like to do a Marvel Day at Sea, if not this year, perhaps next year. But I think more importantly, I want to wait until my son, my youngest, is 3 and potty trained and can just experience the pools and the ship in a little bit of a different way, and perhaps has a few less tantrums along the way in life. I think it will be a little bit more pleasant for him and for us as well. Not that you can't. I've been taking my kids on these ships since my son was 8 months old when he went on. I don't think there's any right age for vacation or Disney, to be honest with you. But of course, we live here, so doing the Walt Disney World Half Marathon in January, doing the Princess 10K in February, probably do Star Wars. Probably use some DVC points in July, and we'll see. We've talked about doing a joint cruise for my kids' birthdays in the summer, July and August, and my wife is off, so maybe in the summer. Not my favorite time to go, but we'll see.
Well, a lot of things ahead of you. That's awesome. So I guess the 3 of us will meet up at the end of the half marathon here in under a month.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, we'll have to do that. Chris, I didn't realize you were running the half marathon here. I think you did mention that in the previous show.
Yeah. Half marathon for me and for Seth, and that'll be our first half. So we're excited to see if we can actually do that.
Yeah, get ready. So, we can talk after this, but we're out to talk about like mile 7-8, where there's a little bit of an elevation change. Not much. It's where it starts to hurt for me.
But that's where the Green Army Man's going to be to motivate you up and over that bridge, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, as we finish up, thanks for coming on, Steve, and sharing your and your family's experience cruising on the beautiful Disney Magic out of Miami. We don't get a lot of those, so it was good to head on down to Miami and kind of get your viewpoints from down there. We really do appreciate it. And if you just use your magic powers or use your super skills to get on that Marvel Day at Sea, we'd love to have you come back, and we'll talk a little bit more Disney Cruise Line.
I'll be back, guys. I'm shooting for that platinum before the Wish is out there. Don't worry. Two more to go.
I think there's a lot of people doing that. So, well, all the best, Steve. Happy holidays to you and your family, and we will talk to you soon.
To you guys as well. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Steve for coming on and sharing his and his family's experiences as they sailed aboard the beautiful Disney Magic on a very maritime cruise out of Miami. And if you're listening to this as the year comes to end here in 2019, all of us here at the DCL Podcast want to wish you all the best as we head on into 2020 and look forward to all that 2020 has to bring, which means cruising and traveling and vacations. And we've got a lot more stories and trip reports to bring to you, and a couple of different topics as well that we're going to touch on in 2020. We're looking forward to continuing the podcast and bringing you along with us. So between now and our next show, if you'd like to reach out to us and come on the podcast and share your experiences as well, you can always reach me, Steve, at dclpodcast.com. Once again, that's Steve at dclpodcast.com, and we'll get you set up and find a time to record and bring your stories out to all of our listening audience as well. And if you'd like to support our show, you can do so through our Patreon program. You can always go overhead to patreon.com/DCLpodcast and find all the information there. So between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next vacation, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on that next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.